Those that were busy protecting their Second Amendment, they didn't know that was a distraction. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm not trying to make anything up because as of today, yes, the first one, they have come for it. And I know indeed a lot of those that were protecting the second one, they have no idea. The first one allows you to have freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion, and free press. Yeah, no intervention when it comes to the press. But guess what? The Secretary of War, I don't know, is he the head of war, whatever? Yeah, he's now bringing new regulations and new rules that the press has to sign, especially those that go to the Pentagon, right? To give you news that concern your army, your military, and everything that rotates around that. He has new rules for them, and anybody that refuses to sign on these rules, they lose their card and they can't go there anymore. Mind you, they are already restricted. They want now to control what you hear. This is the beginning of something that is so dark, and I'm afraid for a lot of Americans. And this is not me trying to fearmonger you guys, but this is me trying to let you know people are underreacting on this. I bring you reactions of the medias because now mainstream media is standing strong and tall, and even independent media outlets, personalities, they have refused to sign these rules. They are like, we ain't giving our rights away. And I think this is something that all of you would like to see, especially if you reside in the United States of America, even if you are out, but you are American. This needs to be put out there in the media. We haven't seen it on mainstream, so I think let independent, medias give you this. I want us to look at this. We'll come back and talk about it. Just do me a favor. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Like the video. Don't forget to share and subscribe to the channel. I'll be back with more.
So this just in, Fox is reportedly about to reject the White House in a major way. As we reported yesterday, a whole bunch of news networks have already rebuked Pete Hegseth's demand that they sign a pledge that they won't run stories without any, quote, unauthorized information about the Pentagon without approval from the Department of Defense if they want to retain their access. The White House is giving them until Wednesday to either agree or turn in their press passes. Well, according to Mediaite, Fox is planning on joining the networks in rejecting the White House's demand. We are learning that major networks including Fox, NBC, ABC, CBS, and CNN will all issue a joint statement later today making their position clear. As of now, the only network that has agreed to Hegseth's demands has been the MAGA propaganda network OAN. If Fox goes ahead and rejects the Trump regime, it will be incredibly embarrassing for Hegseth, who was a morning show host at Fox before being tapped by Trump to run the Defense Department. We've got a new episode of the Midas Touch podcast out now. Remember to listen on Apple Podcasts and Spotify for more updates.
Almost every news outlet has refused to sign Pete Hegseth's pledge requiring any media to essentially get approval from him or the Pentagon before reporting news out of the Pentagon. But that's a historic attack on the First Amendment, and media outlets are refusing to sign it. And well, as of 5 p.m. today, the only news outlet that actually agreed to sign it was OAN, One American News, which is a Trump-aligned media outlet. That's the only organization that will have access, as it currently stands, to the Department of Defense. Because everyone from Newsmax to the New York Times to the Washington Post and the Atlantic have all said absolutely not. We're not going to sign a pledge that would criminalize journalism and free speech. Shoot, I wouldn't sign that pledge if I were in the Pentagon.
This is pretty concerning. The Pentagon just released a whole new policy to how they manage the press, and it is very controversial, and it really limits our insight into what the Pentagon is doing. This is a tweet from the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, who describes this new policy as basically saying that the press can no longer roam free through the Pentagon, which they could never do in the first place. They must wear a visible badge, which, as far as I'm aware, they always had to wear a visible badge. And credentialed press are no longer permitted to solicit criminal acts, which all of these sound pretty common sense and sensible. However, again, none of these are necessarily new, so what's the big deal? Well, a key part of this new policy stipulates that the Pentagon has to be allowed to approve or deny what the press is able to publish whenever they report on the Pentagon. And if any members of the press do not sign this policy, just basically recognizing receipt of the new policy, then they will lose their access to report on the Pentagon. The Pentagon Press Association, which largely credentials a lot of the press that enter into the Pentagon and report on the Pentagon, they are not fans of this at all. And neither is the press. In fact, as far as I'm aware, the only outlet that has actually signed this memo is OAN. And this is not a partisan issue. Here you see the Atlantic, Washington Post, CNN, and New York Times are all refusing to sign this pledge. This covers both the left and the right. In fact, CNN and every other outlet that I just mentioned have criticized this new policy as stifling free press. In fact, CBS News said that this is a message of intimidation. And look, we've got a potential war in Venezuela that could pop off at any moment. We've got other conflicts going on in the rest of the world that we have U.S. soldiers involved in. We've got U.S. troops being deployed around the country on a domestic mission. The people need to know what the Pentagon is doing and that it is being held accountable. That is a key part of our democracy, is that the press can do their job. So banning the press from doing their job and basically funneling their reporting through what is approved and what is not approved, that is antithetical to free press. And again, you'll see tweets like this from officials that, again, make this kind of seem like it's common sense or a very reasonable request, but that doesn't tell the entire truth. So this needs to be getting more, there's so many stories here that need to be getting more coverage, but this is definitely one that needs to be at the top of the list.
My name is Nancy Youssef, and I'm a Pentagon correspondent. I have been covering the building since 2007. Up until this administration, we were allowed to walk in every part of the building. That allowed us to get a sense of the way the Pentagon operated and move about quite freely. In May, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth restricted our ability to move in the building to a few hallways on one floor and the food court. The most recent change is that the department is now requiring us to sign an agreement that could place limits on what we report and how we do it. If we want to cover the Pentagon, in the Pentagon, we have to, according to these rules, write what they want us to say is happening in the United States military. In a town like Washington, so often what you're doing is hearing news. You know, when you're out in the field, you can see it, you can smell it, you can touch it, you can taste it. But the Pentagon offered a really unique experience because you could hear things through the hallway, get a sense of the environment and the tensions or the exuberance. I'll give you a concrete example. The day that the U.S. lost 13 service members in Afghanistan as the U.S. withdrawal was happening, I happened to be in the building, and you could just see the anguish on people's faces as the number of deaths kept growing, both for the U.S. military and for the hundreds of Afghans who were in that explosive. And so to understand the impact of the consequences of their decisions and to see it is really illuminating, because I think in that moment you could see it in the building that people felt a sense of responsibility and guilt. It's just something that a phone call can't replace. I have really found that the way you can really understand a story better and get it to a more accurate place is by interacting with the people who are part of that story, and being in the building really allowed us to do that. Because we were there and they could see us there, there was an unspoken message that the Pentagon was relaying to the troops, that they not only defended the First Amendment by wearing the uniform and defending the Constitution, but by having us there. And so it invited people to feel like they could tell the military story to help us, the American public, understand it better. Ultimately, we'll know less about what the military is doing, despite the fact that more than 2 million people serve in this all-volunteer force. We'll know less about how much of our money they're spending and how they're spending it. And I think we'll have less accurate reporting ultimately, because we're having fewer avenues to understand and get to information.
Okay, can we just stop and listen for a second? The Pentagon just dropped something called the Press Access Policy. It's a policy that forces every reporter covering the military to sign a document agreeing to a list of restrictions, or that reporter risks losing their credentials. Why is this even a thing? And they say it's about security. But press freedom groups are calling it what it actually is, which is control. So let's think about that. The Department of Defense, the branch sworn to defend freedom, is now deciding which questions reporters are even allowed to ask. This isn't a headline to scroll past, because every country that has ever lost its democracy started exactly like this. Not with gunfire, but with paperwork. If that sounds dramatic, go read Maria Ressa's story. She's a Filipino-American She's a journalist who built a newsroom that exposed government lies and corruption. For doing her job, she was arrested, convicted, and nearly silenced under laws, written to look reasonable. She won the Nobel Peace Prize, then wrote How to Stand Up to a Dictator. And she said something that should stop you cold. Democracy is fragile. You have to fight for every bit, every law, every safeguard, every institution, every story. You must know how dangerous it is to suffer, even the tiniest cut. This is why I say to us all, we must hold the line. Wow. Just let that sink in. Because if journalists have to ask the Pentagon for approval before talking to the public, that's not transparency. That's the first crack in freedom's foundation. Read Maria's book and connect the dots. Because silence doesn't protect democracy, it buries it.
We're in a deeply concerning time for press freedom where the Pentagon wants to pre-approve everything the media puts out about the US military. If you've heard anything about the US military, you'd know that we do a lot of illegal stuff. Therefore, with the Pentagon trying to shut down free press, that's a really concerning step for reporting and journalism in general. This is also a really common step that you see in the rise of authoritarian regimes. Now, I'm glad that the media is not signing on to this mandate, but they're going to have to hold strong for quite a few years here. I'm not saying that the mainstream media is perfect, but, maybe this can be a sign of hope for some people. Ultimately, I think it's best to subscribe to a lot of investigative journalism and trying to support more independent creators like me that can go and show you what's happening on the ground.
Over the weekend, his foxy friend Pete Hegseth announced a new policy that requires journalists with Pentagon press credentials to sign a pledge promising not to report information that hasn't been explicitly authorized for release. That includes unclassified information. They want to pick and choose what the news is. I know that's not as interesting as muzzling a comedian, but it's so important to have a free press, and it is nuts that we aren't paying more attention to it.
Well, there are so many heartbreaking things happening right now, but there's something that just happened today that should not escape any of our attention. And that has to do with a new directive from the Pentagon. And Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, who has now put out a statement saying that reporters can only put out in the press what the Pentagon says that it wants them to print. And that involves not only classified information, of course, but unclassified information. So that means basically no free press. A problem we've had in the last few years is, especially with the Iraq War and so forth, the press was already acting in too many cases like just stenographers. They would just print what was said at the briefings from the Secretary of Defense, which was horrible enough. But now they're being told you can't. If you put out anything other than the predetermined information that the Pentagon says that it wants you to put out, then you will lose your press access. So that really means just total government control of press and media. That the people will hear only what the government wants you to hear. Now, why is this particularly dangerous on the subject of war and peace? Well, I'm old enough to remember the Vietnam War. And it was a terrible scam on the American people that was finally revealed through such things as Daniel Ellsberg, the Pentagon Papers, and so forth. Because at that time, you had a press like the Washington Post that was strong enough, powerful enough, and willing to print those things, a Supreme Court that was willing to back that up. It was an America really dedicated to the things on which we purport to stand. And once that happened, the people saw what was really happening in Vietnam, and that's when the war came to an end. Now, this is not only very, very dangerous. It's really interesting because in the first administration of Trump's, he didn't seem that into military stuff. With this term, he sort of discovered the military like a little boy set of Legos. Oh, I'm going to send them here. I'm going to send them there. People in Venezuela. I'm going to send the military into this city or that city. And he also said yesterday that he was sending troops into various cities because he's cutting crimes, right?
But we set ourselves up very well in Chicago, Memphis, New Orleans a little bit. It's sort of like war. I hate to tell you, it's like war. Some of these people are really bad.
So he's saying there's some bad people. I'm not saying there aren't. There's some criminals out there. I'm not saying there aren't. But it's not the American way that the government, he's going to decide who deserves what, live and die. These people, when he says, I've made it safe for crime. Really? Who'd you get rid of? Did they have due process? Where'd they go? Where did all those homeless people go? I live in Washington, D.C. Oh, isn't it wonderful? Those tents aren't here. Yeah, where'd those people go? Where were they sent? No answers. And now yesterday, he actually used the word war. He said, we're planning to go into all these cities. We've got plans. He said, it's like a war. At the same time that Hegseth is saying, oh, by the way, anything being done with the U.S. military, you cannot report to the people and even keep your press access. Dictators do these kinds of things. No rules-based order, no freedom of the press. Just a small group of people doing whatever they want to do. Join with me. One huge hell no. We'll take it from here.
This is really scary. The First Amendment is over. Freedom of speech. Have you seen what the Pentagon is doing? They are ordering reporters to get approval on the information that they can take or give to the press or disseminate. This is censorship, dictatorship at its highest. It's ridiculous. We need to stand up and fight. When the First Amendment is gone, freedom of speech, democracy is over. By the way, this is from the Department of Defense, which is now the Department of War. Good Lord.
So a lot of mainstream media has refused to sign on to this Pentagon press pledge, which would require them to essentially get approval from Hegseth and the Pentagon before reporting something. The New York Times, The Atlantic, Washington Post, CNN, The Guardian, even Newsmax have all refused to sign on to this pledge. And so as a result, Pete Hegseth just put out one emoji in response, just a waving hand, almost as if he's waving goodbye to press access for these major media outlets at major Pentagon facilities. He then just followed up with a tweet saying, quote, "Pentagon access is a privilege, not a right. So here is the Department of Defense's press credentialing for dummies. Press no longer roams free. Press must wear a visible badge. Credentialed press no longer permitted to solicit criminal acts. Done. Pentagon now has same rules as every U.S. military installation." It's not clear what he means by that, but essentially he is cracking down on the press as we speak. But mainstream outlets are standing up and not signing on to this pledge, so kudos to them. Spread the word, follow along for more.
I want to make it abundantly clear that in no time in history was the press ever on the wrong side of history, unless, of course, there were propagandists within media, and that is also something that has happened. However, right now, multiple news outlets have refused to sign Pete Hegseth and the Pentagon's basically press promises that they laid out. Here's a little bit more detail. So on the Twitter sphere, Richard Stevenson, who's the Washington bureau chief and the New York Times communication guy, basically said, journalists from the New York Times will not sign the Pentagon's revised press pass policy, which threatens to punish them for ordinary news gathering protected by the First Amendment. You can pause to read more. And then Pete Hegseth basically just responds with a wave, saying like goodbye, and how professional that is. This is the statement issued by The Atlantic, and this one by the Washington Post. It is a sign of the times when news and press is gathering together to say no to our own government. And I think that is indicative of the Trump 2.0 term. We will see what happens next. You can follow for more news updates, but you don't have to.
What have we here, y'all? What we got here? Ooh, what we got here, y'all? What we got here? Oh, yeah, Keg's Breath. Keg's Breath just told all the journalists, you got to sign this contract before you can cover events at the White House. I'm going to sit here a minute while that sinks in. This new so-called policy, it states that they will not report anything not pre-approved by the Pentagon. Journalists can't even ask questions or get info from anyone. Do you know what that's called? All together now, censorship. And these are reporters that cover our military. Our taxpayer-funded military. That one. My friends, if the press cannot freely report, that is not democracy. State-controlled propaganda. But we have a little bright spot. The Washington Post, New York Times, Newsweek, CNN said, hell no. So this is good. At least some big major news outlets are fighting back. Even Newsmax said hell no. Okay, and the Pentagon Press Association, they're pushing back really hard too. That's the lawyers that represent all of the press in the press room. They said this violates the First Amendment and can end up in court. And you know what? It very well may, and it should. This is how authoritarian regimes start. First, they silence the press. Keg's Breath can dress this up as it's state security or whatever the fuck he wants to. All it is he don't want none of us knowing what's going on behind those walls. This is why free press matters, because if they can silence the press, y'all, they can silence all of us. So, to the outlets standing up, thank you. And we're going to stand up with you for our free speech, right? And to those who haven't, we're going to boycott the fuck out of you.
Hopefully from wherever you all are watching this from, you are doing all right. And I do hope that God has protected you and preserved you very well. And at least, given you the grace to keep holding on, because sometimes it's just so hard to hold on when you see your own government coming for you left, right, center. Shout out to all the people that I have featured in here that have, educated us on this, because this is something that needed to be shed light on. And ladies and gentlemen, this is serious. Because once they silence those that enter the Pentagon, because the goal is to make sure that they have control over the narrative that goes out there. While this should be good to show you that there are people that are not going to bow and worship Baal, right? This should also concern you. Because I tell you what, once those that decided they're like, we're not going to worship Baal, we ain't signing our rights away and the rights of our people, then this space is only going to have a few people. And those few people, they're the ones that are going to remain there. They are the ones that are going to be reporting. Don't forget that whatever they report on in regards to the military of the United States of America, it will be scrutinized and fully controlled. I love Americans because they are becoming woke. Americans used to be like, yeah, we had, Afghanistan, those are our enemies, these other countries are enemy, even this one is our enemy. Until when the press became brave, until the development of, investigative journalism, and people started to see a different picture of how evil and dark the US is in the grand scheme of things, and in destabilizing the world, and in creating wars and creating narratives and propagandas and spreading it. That's what he wants back in the US. I told you, different airports have refused to play the videos of, is it Christy Norm or that person, yeah? That, literally is making videos blaming Democrats that they are the ones that are responsible for the government shutdown, and that everybody that is losing their job is because of Democrats. A lot of airports are saying no. And I think we have seen an increasing number of resistance. I know somehow the situation might look helpless, but at least you have people that still have a backbone that are saying, what, no, we ain't gonna do that. Yeah? And, seeing all these presses, all these media outlets and mainstream, media saying, our journalists are not going to sign this, our journalists are not going to sign this, ours are not going to sign this. It is time. Because a lot of people are like, when is it going to be time? It is time. It is time. That now, y'all are seeing the defiance. Now, part of the things that be going on in my head, I'm like, if you're not doing anything wrong, then why are you trying to suppress the freedoms of people? Why are you trying to have them under one umbrella and control them? Why? if everything you're doing is right. I know indeed he thinks that you guys have so much rights and he wants to take those away. And in the theories of democracy, it's like on the line hanging now. Your democracy is on the line hanging. To be honest, a lot of people are saying there's no more democracy anymore. There's a bit left. There's a bit of those that are going to, to still speak and have a backbone. But trust me, once they silence the journalists, they are coming for you. They've already come for the freedom of assembly. Yeah, you assemble, you protest, and call the government out on certain grievances. They silence you. They detain you. They have labeled you Antifa. Oh, did I tell you that they are super worried and scared of the No King's Day that is coming, because they are saying that whoever is going to be taking part in this is Antifa. And Antifa, remember, is a terrorist organization. Whoever is an advocate, whoever is an investigative journalist, this is time for this to literally be going out there. Yeah, and I know that indeed probably you guys, some of you have already left mainstream media. You watch independent journalists. Some of you just watch YouTubers and all of that, right? I am putting this one out here so that you guys know most of your media outlets have not given up on you, but I don't know how long it's going to take them until when they give in, because the pressure is going to be so much. And the thing is, even those that will sign the rules and give away their rights, even if they were to snitch because they signed, they are under hostage because they signed something, they will be kicked out. This administration has done so much better to expose how fascist they are. Lots of people being doxxed, lots of people losing their jobs, lots of people that criticize the government, they are anti-America. The amount of division and hate this administration spreads is diabolical. It's evil. It's dark. And it's taking the United States of America to a period that you guys don't want to be in. And I completely understand why a lot of you are now looking for an escape route. For my black people, if you have the resources and you can be able to check another side of the world, I would say, please try the continent. Try the continent. It's not perfect. I'm just going to be, blunt. It's not perfect either. Yeah? But some of these things, you're not going to be worrying about them. You might have a few worries, adjustments and all of that. Yes. And mind you, you will hear even probably some propagandists, because let me say this, we might have black people that are white supremacists. I'm saying we have black people that are in the black skin, but then they are white. And you will hear them telling you and crying about this and that, but they are on the continent. They are not leaving. They are not leaving. They are here. So if they say the continent is so bad, why are they not leaving? I think those are some of the questions that you have to ask yourself, because I bring some Pan-African content as well. If they are saying the continent is bad, you should ask yourself, why are they not leaving? With this being said, I am trying to say that there is no side of the world that is perfect. Whether you choose the continent or anywhere else where you find your peace, no place is perfect. Each place is going to have its own issues. Make sure you choose a place that is going to be easy on you. Okay? If you like the continent, you are welcome. And if you want to go to Asia, wherever you find your peace. Don't listen to the propaganda of, these ones, they don't like us, these ones. In each of those sides of the world, there are black people that live there peacefully and they love it there. Okay? And I think sometimes the negativity can be too much, that our, sight can be blinded. Okay? And our perspectives can be really darkened by the opinions of other people that, to be honest, specifically live in those countries. So for those of you that are seeing what is going on, this is the beginning of the crumble and downfall of the Babylonian Empire. They say it takes 200 years, and I think from what it looks like, those 200 years, is it 200 or 400? I think 200. Those years are coming to an end. Let me know what you think about the defiance of the mainstream media, and let me know, do you think all of these ones are going to be brought down to their knees? We understand that if they don't sign this, they're going to be kicked away. But what is going to be the next step? Those are some of the questions that we should be asking ourselves. If the independent and mainstream media is kicked out of the business of these people that want to be corrupt and literally start chaos without wanting you guys to know what is happening, what is going to be the next step if these ones are silenced? Because trust me, if they get silenced, they have already started on other people. I don't know who is going to be safe. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. I think from me for today, that's it. I do love all of you guys, and I'll see you in another amazing episode. Till then, my name is Gracie. Stay safe. May God watch over you and protect you. Till then, bye.